Good evening. The news summary for this Wednesday, 1st April. For the past 3 days, the number of positive cases of COVID 19 in the country remains 10. This is according to the latest update from the Department of Health. In the last press conference yesterday, Dr. Jucheri also stated that there are 83 people quarantined at Beauvalon Bay. 117 remains in strict isolation at home on Mae, 6 on Pralin, and another 6 on La Digue. There are 66 others also in quarantine at Four Seasons Belazar. Furthermore, follow-ups are being made on 241 people in the community who may have been in contact with the positive cases. Renovation works being undertaken by the allied builders contractors on Old Hospital next to the mortuary are almost completed. This building will be used as from next week as an isolation center for the COVID-19 patients, whereas the Pralin Holiday Home at Gontons has been identified as the quarantine center for the island. Business owners are calling on government to provide more support to help them survive the coronavirus crisis. Despite promises of state help to pay staff wages, several say the monthly overheads would wipe them out. SBC News has spoken to the owners of large, medium, and small businesses who are calling for flexibility to cut jobs.
Fresh from the boat, 24 tons of imported Egyptian oranges ready for inspection. But these are no longer destined for now deserted luxury hotels. Apex Supplies is now selling more than 300,000 rupees worth of top quality fruit at cost price to anyone who'll buy it before it must be thrown away.
Our job is to find a solution, and wastage is not of the question. We don't want to throw things away. We all need it. And look, the vitamins are there. If you want to survive the COVID-19, there it is.
For his 100 staff, 80% of the company's business is with hotels. More imported goods intended for the hospitality trade are already en route here, meaning weeks of surplus going cheap.
In this container is 8 tons of bacon and chicken pieces. And in this container, 24 tons of French fries. That's an awful lot of food. And the problem is there are now not enough people here to eat it.
At his pool cleaning company, Hughes Huaro says dozens of clients have already cancelled contracts. With limits on foreign exchange to import vital chemicals, state help paying his wage bill may not stop his business going bust.
Salary-wise, I can sustain for about 2 months. What about our running costs? What about our operation costs? It's going to be a high expense on our business. But frankly, we are in a situation that we have to sit and talk.
That sentiment is echoed by Mark Wildrow, who owns 13 companies across several sectors, employing around 250 people.
What we've done is we've put all the emphasis on employees and not employers. The two are in sync. If you have 20 people in a company, and I lay 5 off, and I can ride the storm for 6 months, okay? It's better to have 15 people employed and 5 I will let go, redundant.
A tall order perhaps, and a towering problem certainly for business and government as Seychelles seeks solutions to the economic consequences of a global pandemic.
The Finance Minister, Maurice Lalonde, has responded to call from businesses, saying the government has already put in place a raft of emergency measures to support the private sector. He says the main element in the financial assistance for job retention scheme which will provide assistance with keeping employees on the payroll. He goes on to mention the other support, including 6 months deferment of business tax payments, CSR, TMT, money benefit money benefit tax, moratorium on loan repayments, restructuring of credit facilities, reduction of electricity tariffs, and a credit line from the central bank to commercial banks for the provision of low interest loans. The minister adds the Appropriation Amendment Bill 2020, if approved by the National Assembly, will be an essential means of providing for this urgent support to the private sector. The few remaining British tourists who've chosen to leave have joined other Europeans on the final passenger flight home. The last UK visitor was photographed checking in at the international airport for the chartered flight. The departure was witnessed by the British High Commissioner Patrick Lynch with his French and German counterparts. Mr. Lynch said only a handful of non-resident British people had chosen to stay behind, mostly to remain with family members.
The last 10 days, the British High Commission has taken hundreds of calls. We've been engaging with the airline, with Seychelles government, partners, and yes, we've moved from 1,000 British national tourists here to a situation where today all of the British national tourists who were visiting Seychelles who wanted to return home are now home.
So who's left?
There's a handful of British tourists here who've chosen to stay with friends, with family, but we're in touch with them and we're still available for advice and support should they need it. The High Commission reached out to every hotel and guest house, spoke to every airline, spoke to all major government departments, a real collaborative effort. And that's why we saw quite a remarkable drop in tourist numbers in a very short space of time. If we are not selfish, if we make the necessary changes to our daily life, if we avoid unnecessary social interaction, if we are strict with face and with hand hygiene, then that will make a massive difference to protect the elderly and the vulnerable.
There will be a reduction of 28 cents in electricity tariff for residential and commercial consumers. The reduction takes effect today until 30th of June. The executive officer of the Energy Commission, the body that regulates energy tariffs, said that the decrease is in line with the normal quarterly review of electricity tariff. For the first quarter of 2020, 25 cents reduction was being set for all sectors. However, following the announcements by President Ford that the electricity tariff for the government sector would not change, the 3 cents benefit is being passed on to residential and commercial sectors, thus the 28 cents decrease. The Department of Environment has expressed concern over the amount of rubbish that people are illegally dumping on reclaimed land. Perseverance is one of the most affected areas. We visited at least 3 illegal dumping sites there on Tuesday afternoon. The Chief of Environment Police, Mr. André Firmino, says that it is mostly old household appliances and construction debris that are being dumped there, whereas at Providence, most of the rubbish found on the vacant property are remains of PET bottles. The Department of Environment is reminding the public that it is an offense to dump their rubbish on illegal sites. The fine for such offenses is between 10,000 rupees and 1 million rupees, or 20 years imprisonment, or both a fine and imprisonment. The Chief Environment Police says that often the rubbish led them to the culprit, but so far no one has been prosecuted.
Okay, most of the time, after someone has committed the offense, like illegal dumping, we meet an agreement that instead of we go to court, we come to an out-of-court settlement agreement so that we agree on a fine, so that both parties agree with it. Because sometimes, you know, the court procedure is a bit long, because it depends also on the quantity of the waste. Okay, sometimes maybe it's the first offender. We a little bit lenient. That's why we go to an out-of-court settlement instead of going with a court case.
That's the end of this news summary. Join me at 8 for the news bulletin in Creole. Until then, have a pleasant evening.